Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. This is the town of Essex, which was once part of Ipswich. As most of you know, this is the town of Essex 200th anniversary. And we say, wait a minute, Essex was settled in 1634, but it was what's the term, Jim? A parish of the town of Ipswich until 1819. Now, everyone who is familiar with Essex knows there's antique shops here and knows that shipbuilding was a big deal in Essex. But shipbuilding was not the only thing. For 70 years, from 1872 to 1942, the railroad ran here. Before the railroad, this is just our beginning slide, before the railroad, you could walk out of town. You could ride a horse out of town, a horse and buggy out of town, or row a boat out of town. And freight was carried in and out of town on horse-drawn or ox-drawn wagons. In the 1830s, the beginning of railroads became a big deal. In the 1830s, the railroad was the equivalent of the space shuttle for technology. That sounds funny, but it was a big deal. And the first railroad to run through eastern Massachusetts was the Eastern Railroad. Went from Boston, eventually went all the way to Portland, Maine. It reached Salem by 1838, reached Ipswich up here by 1839. It reached Newburyport in August of 1840, and in December of 1840, it reached Portland, Maine. A little old Essex right here became envious of the fact that it didn't have a railroad because they saw this as a way to get commerce in and out of town, people in and out of town. The railroad reached Gloucester in 1847, and Essex had tried in 1844 to get the Eastern Railroad, which this was, built through Essex to Gloucester because they knew they were building it. The Eastern Railroad turned them down. They went through the coastal communities, reached Gloucester in 1847. Little old Rockport, where I live. By the way, I am a retired locomotive engineer. I drove trains for 40 years for this railroad, but all over New England, and then for 3 years up in New Hampshire at the Conway Scenic Railroad. Why does an engineer wear a red bandana? It's not to rob banks. As you'll see in pictures later on, and these are two scale models of trains that came to Essex. First one is a passenger train, the other one is a freight train. Steam engines, as you'll see in pictures, burn coal to boil water to make steam to make the engine move. When they were going forward, it's not a problem, but when the engine would run backwards, and you'll see pictures of them running backwards, all that coal dust would blow into the cab, and the engineer and the fireman would cover their faces to keep from breathing the coal dust. So that's why the red bandana. Anyhow, the railroad reached Gloucester in 1847. Rockport was very envious, wanted a railroad, and the Rockport, at a town meeting, voted $5,000 to sell stock to start the beginning of the railroad. The town of Rockport built a railroad from Gloucester to Rockport, 3.5 miles, and completed in 1861, the first year of the Civil War, and Essex became keenly aware of this and said, we want a railroad. So in Essex, they also got through the state legislature permission to build a railroad and permission to sell stock, and the town of Essex spent, Jim, was it $50,000? $50,000 at town meeting. Same thing that Rockport did, town meeting, voted to spend money to build a railroad. And by May of 1872, the railroad had been built from Hamilton to Essex. And as you can see here, this is downtown Hamilton in probably around 1880, 1870, 1880. This is the main line. Commuter rail still runs here today. This is 2 tracks, the main line from Boston to Beverly to Hamilton to Ipswich to Newburyport to Portland, Maine, Eastern Railroad. This track curving off here was where the railroad went to Essex, off to the right. First half mile out of town today is still a walking path, but the railroad's gone. This area where you see the locomotive and the wind-powered water tank to provide water for steam engines, this pipe right here could swing to the left, swing to the right to put water. Steam engines, remember, boiled water to make power to move them. The windmill lifted the water up out of the ground into the storage tank. Now this is not a very sharp picture, but it gives you an idea what it looks like when they were building a railroad. Locomotive, these men are lifting rail, and there's samples of rail in that far case off there to the left, the different sizes of rail. This is very light rail. Rail in the United States and Canada is measured by the weight per yard. This rail here is probably 60 pounds per yard. Amtrak today runs on 131 pound per yard, very heavy rail, and there is a sample of that in the back case. These men are laying the track to build a railroad from Hamilton to Essex. This is a typical train from around 1880. The railroad was built and completed in 72. The first train ran out of Essex on July 1st of 1872, even though it's completed in May of 1872. Now, this is train leaving Hamilton in the summer, and this is the same, a similar train leaving in the winter. And again, not a terribly good picture, but it shows the right-of-way through Myopia Country Club. This pole line here we're going to talk about later on. I'll explain why, but this is the first mile of track out of Hamilton, and it is a public footpath today. The first station was Miles River. This is Bridge Street in Hamilton today, and this is looking towards Essex, and Hamilton is 1.2 miles behind us. This little white flaggy thing here is a flag stop signal. Tells the engineer someone wants to get on the train here. Now you absolutely cannot tell when you drive Bridge Street today. This is Miles River right here. There's still a bridge over Miles River. There's no trace of the railroad. There's a high fence here, but that's what it looked like. This picture was taken in the 1930s. This is looking back the other way, back towards Hamilton. Again, around 1930, man is waiting for the morning train. There's the flag stop symbol set in the position to tell that when it's horizontal, it tells the engineer to stop to pick someone up. This is a 1930 version of a Porta Potti. Stations had this station when it was first opened in 1872. There was a man inside selling tickets. Long before the 1930s, that practice was stopped. The station's boarded up, but it's still open for passengers. This is between Miles River and the next station, Woodbury. This E4 railroad steam locomotives did not have speedometers. The engineer measured how fast it was going by timing the distance, milepost to milepost. This is E4. On the other side, it would say H2. This is 2 miles from Hamilton. If the engineer's looking at his watch, the maximum speed here was 30. 30 miles an hour is 2 minutes, milepost to milepost. So that's how the speed was measured. Again, not a very great picture, but this is a train between Miles River and Woodbury Station. This is Bridge Street here. To orient yourself, up the hill to the left is Gordon Conwell Seminary. The back entrance is just out of sight here. This is a train going from Hamilton to Essex. Now, you all know what the weather is like today, and I'm wearing typical engineer garb, loose-fitting overalls, bandana to cover my face so I don't breathe the coal dust. This is not going to Essex. There's no color pictures existing of the inside of a cab of a steam engine, but it shows what the man's doing. It could be 100 degrees outside. It's 2,000 degrees inside that firebox. He's shoveling the coal in. Hot, tiring job. We're almost into Woodbury, the next station. This crossbuck, that thing that says railroad crossing, that's School Street in Hamilton, going over here to Route 22. And we're looking again back towards Hamilton, and this is Woodbury Station. Now, Woodbury Station was also once open with a ticket agent inside, but before the American Depression, it was closed. The building was still open for passengers to wait in the morning. Essex to the left, Hamilton to the right. And notice the advertising posters. Before television, advertising, one of the biggest markets or mediums for advertising, and you'll see them scattered around the room below the pictures, was posters. And posters were found outside and inside railroad stations and on the inside of commuter rail cars. Woodbury Station, we're 2.5 miles from Hamilton. This is a train leaving. So far we have found, I believe Brad Kippen can remind me, I think he's found 6 color slides. These were taken by Dana Story. Dana Story was the grandson of Philip Adams, who was the first engineer to drive trains out of Hamilton. Dana Story took these pictures. This train is leaving Woodbury Station. This pole line is on Essex Street, which is Route 22. The train is headed towards Essex, and to the left down the road is Essex. Now this is not a very good train, but it's taken with an old brownie box camera like you see in that first glass case over there. You can see there's the handrail on the rear of the train. We're looking back from the rear of the train, headed towards Essex. This is Essex Street in Hamilton. Essex is off to the right, Hamilton to the left, and there's Woodbury Station down there. This is a place, I was telling another gentleman here, this is called, as the sign says, Ice House Bend. The primary reason for building the railroad to Essex was hauling ice, and we'll get into that later on in pictures. Look at this view. Ice House Bend, sharpest curve, steepest grade on the railroad looking towards Hamilton. Here's the edge of Chebeco Lake. This picture was taken 1920, and this picture was taken 2 weeks ago. Same location. There's Chebeco Lake. This is the railroad curving around here. If anyone wanted to walk this path, drive to Red Gate Road, park your car where you see the gas marker. The reason the right-of-way exists, there is a buried gas line from Hamilton Station all the way to Pond Street or Pond Road in Essex, where it veers off. Now this is Red Gate Road in probably around 1900. This thing here, there's a big gate, red gate, painted red. This thing is called a stile. It enabled people to walk through the gate, but not cows. And right there you see the railroad tracks behind it. Stiles are very common in England. England has 140,000 miles of public footpaths through private property, and you'll find stiles to keep cattle from coming out when you cross a farm, but allow people. This is the exact same location today. This is Red Gate Road, Ice House Bend, and a pretty walk is off to the right, Chebeco Lake straight ahead, and downtown Essex to the left. This is the old railroad right-of-way right here. Here's Red Gate Road as seen from the rear of a train going to Hamilton. Hamilton is behind us. Essex is about another 2 miles down the track in this direction. Chebeco Lake to the right, and Route 22 off to the left. I'll read you the caption here since it doesn't come out. This is everyone knows who Norman Rockwell was, famous American painter. This is his one train picture. It says, "This painting relives the feeling in childhood when we dream of the majesty of far-off places and adventures beyond the horizon. The young boy imagines his place on the passing train, putting miles of imagination between him and the chores at hand." Now, the next stop after Woodbury was Centennial Grove. Chebeco Lake is off to the right, and downtown Essex, this is a railroad track, Essex is to the left. Centennial Grove never had a station. Now, everyone in Essex today knows Centennial Grove, what you see here today. This is a little beach, town beach for the residents of Essex. Centennial Grove was developed by the railroad. The railroad reached Essex in 1872. By 1876, the management of the Eastern Railroad recognized the potential of building a tourist park here for extra passenger business. So they made a deal with the Lowe family. They took a lease on this land on what's called the Neck. We're looking south down Chebeco Lake. Chebeco Lake is a little over a mile long from this beach to the very south end of the lake. The railroad took a 10-year lease and built Centennial Grove in 1876. Centennial Grove had dining rooms. This is a dance hall. There was a shooting gallery. There were rowboats available to rent. There was a steamboat that took people down the lake, a dance hall. It was a big place, and it brought huge business for the railroad. In August of 1892, imagine those of you who live in Essex going down to Centennial Grove to go for a swim on the beach. In August of 1892, there were 6,000 people that came to Centennial Grove by train. The biggest train down here was 42 cars split into two sections, two 21-car-long trains. The rear of this 12-car train is down at Centennial Grove Road with Chebeco Lake to the left and Route 22 off to the right. This train is stopped unloading people. So many people came down by train that there would be Boston cops come down on the train. After the train dropped all their people off, the train would chug down to downtown, and the Boston cops would be deputized as legal police to make arrests in town if the people were too rowdy at the Grove. This is a train going by the same place. This is going by very shortly. We'll see milepost 4 from Hamilton. What you see, this train racing along, this is the afternoon commuter train bringing Essex residents home from work in Boston. It's headed towards Essex. It's going by milepost 4 on the other side, and this today is Harry Homan Drive. And on the other side of that train is milepost 4, H4, 4 miles to Hamilton, E2, 2 miles behind me as I took the picture to Hamilton. Centennial Drive Road is right here, across the highway with Chebeco Lake off to the left. This man is well aware that he has one of the few surviving mileposts. I gave him a picture of that last train, which he'd never seen. He told me he keeps a railroad spike in his mailbox to hold down the mail. Now, from this next picture, again, not a terribly good one. A lot of these pictures we were seeing were taken with a Brownie box camera, which was not a high-definition camera. But what we're looking at here, this railroad crossbuck on both sides, this is it Pond Street or Pond Road? Pond Street. Pond Street, downtown Essex off to the left. This property is occupied by the building center, and this barn is a part of the building center complex. This barn still exists. Pond Street down to Chebeco Lake is off to the right. We're looking towards Hamilton. And right there at Pond Street, if you go there today, this is what you see. I'm standing on the edge of Pond Street with Harry Homan Drive behind me. We're looking towards Essex. This is the eastern edge of a bridge abutment. This is the western edge of a bridge abutment. And Alewife Brook, which used to be called Chebeco Brook, passes under here. This is the railroad bridge right here. You can easily see standing. If you drive down Pond Street to Harry Homan Drive's on the left, on the right, this is what you see on the left. Hamilton's only another 1.5 miles to the right. The next station shortly after this is Essex Falls. Now, no railroad crossing on the Essex branch ever had crossing gates or any kind of electric flashers. The train had to stop at every crossing. You see the stop post for a train, and this funny looking thing with two dots, there were yellow sign with 2 yellow dots. Each one of those 2 dot signs tells the engine that's pushing a snowplow, for the men on the snowplow, tells them to lift the blade, because railroad snowplows have a blade that goes down between the rails, and there are 3 things here that would rip that plow off if they didn't lift it up. The first is the railroad crossing. This is Apple Street here with Western Ave right over here. Apple Street here, Route 128 to the right. But the 3 things that would break the plow blade off is first Apple Street, then the guardrails over the Alewife Brook, and then the switch to the siding here where they loaded sand. Now, right here, you cannot see any of this today. It's all gone. But they used to load sand from Wingersheek Beach. There was a loading ramp over there with a dump truck had backed out, dumped the sand in. Sand was loaded into rail cars, which went to the GE plant in West Lynn, and sand was used for casting cast steel, whatever they were building. They used to build electric generating turbines and the casing was made of cast steel. The sand to pour the liquid steel in came from Wingershik Beach via the railroad. This picture is the same location taken in probably the 1870s, no later than 1880. The headlight is oil. Locomotives did not get electric headlights until around World War I. This is early on. There's only one symbol here to tell the man to lift the plow blade, but behind the engine you could already see a siding where they loaded sand into cars. This is a one-car train headed from Essex to Hamilton, Apple Street here, and we're looking towards Essex. This is my favorite picture of Essex Falls Station because of the dog. This little attachment on the side of the building was, an outhouse. This was also at one time open with a man selling tickets, and in the far left-hand corner back there is a ticket sold from Hamilton to Essex Falls on the train in my collection. By the way, that ticket came from Dusty's ice cream stand in Manchester 2 years ago. I was in there to buy an ice cream, walking out of Dusty's, and up over the door was a little glass plaque with some old railroad tickets in it, and I saw two of them that were used on the Essex branch. I said to the owner, would you be willing to trade something for those tickets or swap something? He said, what do you got to swap? Dusty's is in Manchester. I had two pictures of steam trains in Essex. He swapped the antique 1895 railroad tickets to Essex Falls. I swapped him two pictures, and he thought I was getting the bum end of the deal. I could make 1,000 more copies of those pictures, but there's no more Essex Falls tickets available that I'm aware of.
What did they cost?
What did they cost? I honestly don't know, but in 1935, a round-trip ticket from Rockport to Boston in 1935 was $2.35. Today, it's $10.50 each way.
Alan?
Yes?
Do any of these buildings still exist?
No, none of these stations, except Canoma, which we'll get to, none of these stations exist. Now, this is Dana Story's wife. This is the siding where they load sand. You can see the ramp here. This car is already filled. This is Dana Story's wife, and she is walking we're looking towards Essex. This is looking back the other way. The person that took this picture in 1936 is standing on Apple Street. This is the afternoon rush hour train coming back from Boston. This is Essex Falls Station. The train is stopping. The man, he's already got a flag in his hand. He's got to get off, walk down, and stop the traffic. Look at this location. I'm standing just to the right of the right-of-way. This is 1937, and this is December of last year, 2018. This is the same view. The station sat right here. This is the right-of-way right here, and I'm standing on Apple Street. That's today. That was 1936. Now, in the background, we'll get to this later, but this building still exists. That was related to the trolley cars. We'll talk about that shortly. This is Apple Street. It's just out of sight to the right. This is the top of Essex Falls. There's waterfalls for the next, 2/10 of a mile all the way down to Tidewater. This is the railroad bridge. Essex was to the left, Apple Street to the right. This is now someone's private driveway, which was the old railroad right-of-way. This is coming into Essex, standing on the tracks, taking the picture. Here is Essex Station, which sat right outside the building here. And this is approximately where the tennis courts are out there today. Essex Station, the two-stall engine house, the old freight house, and the old coal shed. Coal came by rail to Essex. This is the old engine house. There was two stalls or two bays to store locomotives at night. Directly behind this building today is the Village Restaurant.
And where to the left?
And we are in Town Hall, which is just out of sight, right up there, right about where the start is. And you'll see some more pictures of Town Hall in the background. Standing over near the Town Hall, looking out across the marsh, this is a train going by the same spot that this picture was taken. The Town Hall off to the left, person standing over near Town Hall, looking out across, looking east towards Gloucester. Here's the afternoon rush hour train coming into Essex from Boston. Now, this is kind of a cool picture. I took this picture right outside Town Hall 2 Saturdays ago, looking in the same direction, ball game. It's not unique to Essex because in 1916, Essex was playing West Gloucester and Essex lost. The person who took this picture, and it's taken with a crude Brownie camera, 1916, ball game going on, exact same location. And the railroad, if anyone wanted to walk a piece of the railroad, walk behind this fence, and right about here, you can see the old railroad, and it is a public footpath from the back side of this chain link fence to Landing Road. It's about a half a mile, pretty walk through the woods. But anyhow, the person who took this picture wrote on the back, Essex versus West Gloucester, and I forget what the score was, except, how much?
Essex lost.
Essex lost. No mention of the train. There's a train coming into Rockport. This is the oldest picture we've found. This is when the railroad first reached Essex. Now, various people have said 1873, 1874, doesn't matter. This is within a year or two of the railroad reaching Essex. This was the original station. Shortly here, we'll get into the fact the railroad was extended across the marsh to Canomo. When the railroad was extended across the marsh, this building was picked up and moved over to a slightly different location. Now here is an afternoon commuter train. This is in the 1930s and still well patronized. Towards the end of the railroad, the only business really was passenger trains. One train in the morning, one train out at night, except Saturdays. There was a middle of the day round trip. Never ran scheduled trains on Sunday for the entire history of the railroad. Now I mentioned before advertising, before TV, railroad stations and railroad cars were venues for advertising. See, this is a typical wooden coach that you would have ridden in to Essex, advertising posters on the end and advertising posters above the luggage rack, both sides. Here's a picture of Essex Station after the railroad was extended to Canomo. This track curving off here did not exist when the railroad was first built. Behind me, the person taking the picture is Canomo Station, half a mile away. Here's the statue right outside the town hall. And I have to tell, because my wife is sitting in the audience, I have to tell a humorous story. That statue is made of gray granite. My wife is from North Carolina, which is somewhat south of the Mason-Dixon line. And the boys down south in the conflagration between the North and the South, they wore gray uniforms. My wife came up here to go to graduate school to Gordon Conwell, and she brought her mother up here for a tour of the area. My wife was living in Essex, and as she drove by the statue, my wife Susan's mother said, "Oh, isn't that nice? They built a statue in memory of our Southern boys up here." Remember, it's gray granite, but she had to tell her mother, there's no statues of Confederate soldiers north of the Mason-Dixon line. Another thing, you notice there's 2 baggage carts here. The railroad carried a lot of things, a lot of traffic, baggage, package express came into Essex, transferred from train to these carts. We'll get into that shortly. This is a picture of a typical crew on the train, crusty old engineer. This guy, I think, is a fireman dressed by his dirty clothes, although he's got a cap with a badge on it. And this would be, one of these is conductor, the other 2 are trainmen. A typical train had a 5-man crew, engineer, fireman, conductor, and 2 trainmen to assist in collecting tickets, station in the background. Now, a key part of the railroad was the men who took care of repairing and maintaining the track. This was a hand car. These are the men who kept the track in good condition. You see they have tools they're sitting on, shovels to work with. These were called section men. officially. They maintained a section of track, and a section of track that men maintained would be anywhere from 5 miles to 8 or 9 miles, all up and down the railroad. The slang for these men, and I don't know where it comes from, they were called Gandhi dancers throughout the country. But these are the guys. Now, Phil Adams, who was the first engineer who worked here, there was the hand car kept here in Essex, and Phil Adams thought nothing of taking his whole family, pumping this hand car. You see the handle. There were handle here and another one on the other side, so 4 men pumping up and down. They could get this thing going 20 miles an hour. Phil Adams would take his family to Hamilton to catch a train to Boston to go to a show or something. There never was a way in Essex to get the steam engine, or the locomotive, from one end of the train to the other when it arrived in Essex. The train has already come into Essex. Notice the fireman in the cab is looking back. This train is not coming into Essex. This train has already arrived. Passengers got off. It's downhill, and you can see a little grade here. After the people got off the train, the engine would back up the hill and then quickly reverse and pull forward. There's a man standing on the rear with a handbrake. The engine would pull down. Another man would throw the switch. The engine would roll down towards the engine house, and the conductor would let the cars slowly roll down the hill back to the station. The engine would be turned on the turntable, come back out, and couple onto the other end. But this was the only way to get the engine from one end of the train to the other. Back up the hill, race forward with the engine, and let the cars roll down slow. And the same practice took place with freight trains. This is a freight train that's come to town. The engine now has gone towards the station, and the brakeman is letting the conductor roll down a track.
What size was the turntable?
The turntable is, in this picture, this track right here goes to the turntable. It was down the hill behind what is today's Village Restaurant. And you'll see pictures of that shortly. Now here's the train, the freight train is running around. The freight train would have picked this gondola load of sand up on the way into Essex because there was no way for a train going towards Hamilton to get into that siding. Now here's a typical picture of a locomotive in the 19th century. Notice the huge kerosene or whale oil lit headlamp. That is Philip Adams in the cab. And notice there's a young boy. I was one of those young boys. I used to hang around the railroad when I was a kid, and that's how I ended up working here. But Phil Adams liked children and would often let young boys, probably, I don't know if young girls or not, but young boys ride over to Canoma and back, or certainly go around the turntable. That's a 19th century engine. This is a 20th century steam locomotive, a little more modern in appearance, slightly heavy. This locomotive weighed about 97 tons with coal and water. Now, when an engine became disabled, there's the engine house right back there, and the turntable, and the Village Restaurant is just up the hill. The turntable was between the engine and the engine house, just out of sight. We'll get to that shortly. When an engine became defective, had mechanical problems, Phil Adams would have to go to Salem, to the big roundhouse in Salem, to get another engine. As recently as 1950, all the trains were still steam-powered. This is Salem. This is a turntable here, a roundhouse here. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 engines. It was a 13-stall roundhouse. He would get another engine from here and take it to Essex. Now this has an electric motor. You can see wires up here connected to the top, an electric motor underneath to turn it. But at Essex, they had an Armstrong turntable. If you move that 97-ton locomotive to the middle, to the balance point in the middle of the turntable, 2 people could turn that 97-ton engine. This is Phil Adams himself. This is probably his fireman, and this is one of, no? Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. That's Phil's trademark hat. Phil Adams there. This is probably his fireman, and this is a young boy who used to hang out, as Dana Story did when he was a young boy, hang out and watch the train. This long lever here was to lock the turntable in place once the engine was turned around, so as the engine's coming off, it wouldn't derail. And here's a picture. You see the men right here, the engine house right there. The Village Restaurant is right up here today. It was not built at this time, but the engine was originally going away from us. They're turning the engine all the way around back towards us. and just 2 men to turn the 97-ton locomotive. Now, locomotives were cold. Here's the engine house. This is a wooden tub. Right here is a wooden crane, and on the track beside the crane, they would bring in a carload of coal. Men would shovel by hand to fill this coal tub, dump it in the tender, swing it over. Phil Adams gives an account of a day when he ran 3 freight trains carrying ice from the ice houses down to Hamilton and back. 3 freight train loads. He used 29 tubs of coal for 3 round trips on the train. Here's a picture of Phil Adams in the 19th century, before 1900 obviously. Here's the original turntable, which was made of wood. The last one you saw was made of steel, which came later on. But in his hand right here, he's carrying a pail of kerosene. This is a trap door on the side of the oil-fired headlight. He's getting ready to put oil in the headlamp for night running. We're looking towards Hamilton right there. This is the original freight house in Essex. I'm hoping someone can tell me what happened to it, because this is where it sat for many years. Here's the chicken farm on John Wise Avenue leaving town. The old freight house, after the railroad was abandoned, got moved down there, but I can't see it from the road. Don't know if it exists. Don't know if anyone...
Actually, it's Island Road.
Pardon?
That was Island Road.
Oh, that was Island Road. Does this still exist? Do you know? This building right here? Okay. Here's a map of the layout of downtown. Today, the police and fire station are right here. The village restaurant is right here. The town hall is right here. This is the line to Hamilton and Wenham. Here's the turntable, engine house, the coal shed, the freight house, the depot. The depot was originally over here, got moved across the tracks to here when they built the railroad to Canomo. Now, the number one reason for building the railroad was hauling of ice. Before the 1930s and electric refrigerators came into being, you kept food cool in your house with an ice box. In that cabinet over there, that glass case, is a pair of ice tongs for lifting the ice, and a Sears Roebuck catalog from what year, Jim? 1912, showing 1902, showing all the ice boxes you could buy. This building was the 3rd building built here. This was the Mears Ice House, and see how big this is compared to a railroad freight car. This ice house held 20,000 tons of ice. There were 4 ice houses here. This was the biggest of them all. But these ice houses, with walls anywhere from 1 to 3 feet thick, those walls were filled with either sawdust or hay or both. There's an account in Phil Adams' journal of 91 carloads of hay waiting down at Hamilton to be brought up here, probably for insulation for one of these ice houses. Originally, the ice was cut out on Chebeco Lake by hand with big hand saws. Jim Witham, who is the curator of the Historical Society, tells me this is a Model T engine and a Model T frame. And see, there's 2 saws spinning around here. One of these gentlemen is the owner of the Mears Ice House, and that's the Mears Ice House back there, and the railroad was back there behind the ice house. Number one reason for the railroad was to haul ice out of here. In the busiest year of hauling ice, in the 1920s actually, the railroad hauled 220,000 tons of freight in 1 year on the Essex branch, 170,000 tons of ice, and 50,000 tons of other commodities, mostly lumber. Lumber, coal, grain, etc. Now, the second reason for building the railroad to Essex was to haul lumber, to build ships. In the 70-year span of the railroad to Essex, there were 1,000 wooden ships built here. This is our beloved Lannon, which was built here in Essex much more recently, out on the open ocean off of Gloucester. Here's a typical picture of a shipyard. All of this lumber, for 70 years the railroad was here, came by rail. This is South Essex over there. Across the causeway is behind this picture. This is, Jim, isn't this the present boat landing today, or near where the Essex ship? Yeah, the Story Shipyard. Here's a picture that shows how busy the railroad was. This first car is loaded with lumber for the shipbuilding. And how that lumber got from here down to the shipyards, and there were many shipyards around Essex, was on a wagon like this. Now this is from the December 1935 Gloucester Daily Times. Notice the wagon here, the floor of the wagon is higher than the biggest wheel, so you could slide the lumber right off the railroad car that it's sitting on onto the wagon. Originally oxen-drawn, now horse-drawn, these wagons would take the lumber down to the shipyards. The railroad brought with it three big things besides public transportation. Notice the pole line right here with multiple arms on it. Western Union Telegraph Office. In a glass case back there is the Western Union Telegraph's office sign, a Western Union Telegraph key and sounder. Before the railroad came, when the railroad came in 1872, the Eastern Railroad had just brought in telegraph on its own, extended it to Essex the same year, 1872, brought with it worldwide communication. Before the telegraph, if you lived in Essex and had a friend in London, England, the only way to communicate was via mail. It would take usually a minimum of 4, usually 6 weeks or more to send a letter by sailing ship over to England, get a reply back. When the telegraph came, if the person was in the telegraph office in London, 4 minutes from the time you sent till the time you received a telegram back. This is a telegraph key. This is the sounder. This lever here was pushed to the left to cut off the key when you're receiving a message so it accidentally didn't cover over a message being sent. I bought that telegraph key on eBay. Number 1 was worldwide communication. Number 2, prior to November 18th of 1883, every single town in America had its own time based on when the sun was directly overhead at 12 noon. Imagine running a train east and west when every town has its own schedule. On Sunday, November 18th of 1883, after a year's worth of work between the American and Canadian railroads, the American and Canadian railroads implemented standard time. And these same time zones created by the American railroads in 1883 are still in existence today, both US and Canada. Essex was 16 minutes off of standard time. On Sunday, November 13th, 1883, Essex had to set their clocks back 16 minutes to correspond with standard time. By the way, we're all well familiar with how progressive and modernistic Congress is and the President is in Washington. It took Congress 35 years to adopt standard time after the railroads came up. Now, along with public transportation, the telegraph and standard time, before DHL, FedEx, and UPS, Essex had REA, Railway Express Agency. There's a Railway Express Agency sign over there in one of those cases. This is a poster advertising it. If you bought an icebox through the Sears Roebuck catalog over there from wherever they're made, you could have it delivered by train to Essex by a Railway Express Agency truck, which would pick it up. And these wagons you saw in one of the previous pictures on the station platform, Railway Express was the national package delivery service that served every town in America. Here's a collection of tickets. This is the collection of tickets I bought from, or swapped over from Dusty's Ice Cream. Top 2 tickets, which date to 1895, are tickets on this was from Salem to Canomo, this is Hamilton, Wenham to Essex. These tickets are actually in the far back left corner. But there's other tickets here too. Here's an Eastern Railroad ticket. Now, the Eastern Railroad built the railroad out here, but in 1884, the Eastern Railroad was absorbed into the Boston and Maine Railroad. Here's a typical picture this is in the 1930s, late 1930s. This is the morning rush hour train to Boston getting ready to leave. Canomo is off to the right. The train is facing Hamilton. Here's a steel boxcar, and there's the engine house, and you can see the edge of the turntable right back there. The Village Restaurant is up here today. This 3-story wooden factory was originally built to make shoe boxes for a shoe factory, which we'll get into shortly, over in Canomo, the S.B. Fuller Shoe Company. The cardboard boxes that shipped the shoes were made here. When they went out of business for 1 year, This was a clam canning factory that only lasted a year, according to Dana Story's book, Daily Except Sunday. And then it became a facility that manufactured pipe organs for a short while. This boxcar may have had lumber going over here to where they made pipe organs. And here's the conductor yelling, "What?" We're about ready to take off. He's waving to the engineer, waving his hand, giving a highball. This is in the Essex station. Here's another color slide taken by Dana Story of a train. This is on a Saturday afternoon train. There was an afternoon train, Saturdays only, middle of the day, going down to Hamilton, actually all the way to Boston and back. There's the Congregational Church. Where this building sits, the old station, is approximately where the tennis courts sit. Here's a train leaving. Now remember the bandana story. Towards the end, the engineers didn't even bother to turn the engine when it arrived in Essex. They ran the engine backwards. Here's Town Hall where we're sitting. Here's the statue right here. This engine is running backwards, and that's why the engineer and fireman had to wear the bandana to keep coal dust out. By the way, an interesting little tidbit in Dana Story's book, which is an account of Phil Adams' diaries that he kept. There was where to build Town Hall, which was completed in 1894, went to town meeting vote in 1892. And in 1892, the vote to build Town Hall here, the people in South Essex wanted Town Hall over there. People here wanted it on where it is. The vote was 206 to 200 in favor of building it here. Very close vote. Now here's a picture. This is Route 22 looking towards Essex, which is Essex Street in Hamilton. Here's the conductor holding a red flag. He's walking out in front, and the engine is backing across the crossing. Woodbury Station is maybe 100 feet to the left here. Now, in doing my research for this is Louis Maniotis. This is Landing Road. And this is the old railroad where it crossed right here. In fact, these signs are up on the old railroad right-of-way. Downtown Essex to the right, Hamilton to the left. I'm down here just scoping out the trail. And this is where the public walking trail that goes from here to the ball field, it ends right here. I'm out here looking at this, taking some pictures, and this man walks up and made some humorous comment asking me what I was doing in his neighborhood. But he said it with a twinkle in his eyes. Got into conversation with him. Louis Maniotis, who lives in this house on the left, which was originally a barn to hold lumber to build wooden ships down at the bottom of Landing Road. His grandmother, before World War I get a fantastic story. His grandmother owned one of the first electric copper-bottom tub washing machines in Essex. And she put an ad in the paper that she would wash clothes for 10 cents a bundle. Remember, there were no gates or crossing bells. The train would stop, man would flag the crossing, the engine would move forward, and as the train is chugging by, people on the train who were taking advantage of his mother's offers would toss out the window bundles of dirty clothes on the morning commuter train to Boston. During the day, his grandmother, before World War I, would wash, iron, and fold those clothes. The train would come back in the afternoon and stop. And those people on the train that had tossed off their bundles would pick up their bundles, 10 cents a bundle. Now, 10 cents doesn't sound like much, but when the trolley car, which we're going to get into, came to town, you could ride Essex to Gloucester on the trolley for 10 cents. So it's just a neat story. Now, where the trains went from Essex was into Boston. This is North Station around 1950. It's before the overhead expressway was built. That's the old Boston Garden. That's the Boston Main Railroad headquarters building. You notice all the trains are steam. And trains from Essex went all the way into North Station. That's North Station in 1950. That's North Station today. And that's what I did for a living. In fact, that was my train to Newburyport in the middle of the day. Now here's a train going across the Saugus Marsh on the main line, a train to Essex going 60 miles an hour across the Saugus Marsh. And notice the pole line. There are 40 Western Union telegraph circuits on this pole, 40. The bottom arm only has 2, and those 2 bottom circuits are the railroad communication, telegraph to the different stations. Winters were rough at different times here, and this is a passenger train. There's a coach behind the engine, pushing a snowplow. This is before World War I. It's got an oil headlight on the locomotive. And just out of sight on this picture, I didn't get the whole picture, and there's a man digging out. I think the snowplow is stuck here. Winters could be rough. That was in the 19th century. This is a 20th century picture. Now, I want to point out, here's the snowplow, but here's the rails over here. The snowplow has been derailed somehow. We don't know the story. It's just one of the pictures in the collection. Now, a third item that was big on the Essex branch was hauling milk. This is not in Essex. You see a mountain behind it. But this was a typical milk car that early on ran here. The Boston and Maine Railroad handled 47 carloads of milk per day for something like 47,000 carloads a year. And this glass cabinet over here to your right are one milk can and two cream cans. And there is the station master's log from Essex Falls Station. Before the 1920s, Essex Falls Station shipped 40 8-gallon milk cans per day out of Essex Falls alone. There were 6 or 8 farms. The biggest commodity, according to Phil Adams' journals, the biggest industry after the shipbuilding was agriculture and primarily milk. So this is a typical milk car that would have run on the B&M. Now, the railroad, the steam railroad from Hamilton to Essex ran from 1872 to 1942. In 1895, the electric trolley car came from connecting Beverly to Gloucester. There had been a streetcar line in Gloucester for several years, but in 1895, this is an old work trolley car towing, I'm not sure what's in here, whether it's sand or gravel or whatever. This is a car building the electric trolley line through Essex. They would dig up the street, lay the track, and cover the track back over with just the rails sticking out of the dirt. This is Burnham's Corner. Now notice this brick building and this wooden building, the big chimney, the little chimney, Burnham Corner. This is 1895. This is what it looks like today. Here's the brick building with the chimney, the smaller wooden building. The rails would have been on this side of the street, and there's the mobile gas station. To go back, the mobile gas station today sits approximately over there. Now, the one big piece of evidence of the trolley line was Essex. This structure, this was a powerhouse. This was a trolley car barn where they kept them overnight. This was a wooden office building where the crews to run the trolley cars showed up for work. And in this glass case over here is a bulletin board, Division 246 of the Trolley Car Drivers Union. It was their bulletin board. This building, behind this powerhouse building, to the right is a big, huge coal pile. The railroad, the B&M Railroad ran behind this. Coal came in. Coal was, of course, burned in boilers to boil water, to make steam, to run big generators inside this building. The trolley cars are stored overnight. I'm the person taking this picture, and this picture is probably taken around 1910. The person taking this picture is standing on Western Ave. In downtown Essex is to the left. This building still exists today in a slightly modified form. The chimney is shorter. There's no more trolleys inside, but it's the exact same location. Again, that's about 1910. This is today, Carpenter and McNeil Construction Company. Inside this part of the building over here were 2 big reciprocating steam engines, 2 big electric turbines, and here's a control panel that pumped out 600 volts DC to run the trolley cars. Now, to get on a trolley car, you needed to go to a pole that was painted white. And if you look on that table over there, if you haven't walked up and looked at it, there's a scale model of a portion of the trolley with 3 different kinds of trolley cars. And the first pole is painted white. This is Western Ave. This is Pond Street right here. See the trolley car tracks buried in the dirt. This is not paved. You can see wagon wheel marks in the dirt. But there's a white band on a pole which indicated trolley stop. Now, this is a 3 trolley car loads of children from Pigeon Cove and Rockport. This trolley car was chartered by Oh, great. Arthur Pingree, Reverend Arthur Pingree of Rockport, Mass. He rented 3 trolley cars, brought kids from Rockport to Centennial Grove. This trolley car stopped here because immediately in front of the trolley car is the Essex branch, the steam railroad, and they never let them cross. Arthur Pingree paid to have these children come from Rockport to Centennial Grove to spend the day. Now look at the typical garb. This picture is taken about 1905. All these kids have their lunch boxes. This picture is from a glass plate positive, which is different from a glass plate negative, found in the attic of the house that my wife and I are renting in Rockport. I found this. Dave Stotzer of Cape Ann Photography put this in a digital format, made this print for us. But this is a picture connecting Rockport to Essex, and the fact that children and I live in Pigeon Cove. I could have gotten on a trolley car and come here, spend the day going swimming a long time ago. Now, winters were just as bad for the trolleys as they were for the steam railroad. This is somewhere in Essex. I'm not sure exactly where, but look how high the snow piles are. The winters could shut the system down. There were minor problems occasionally on the trolley. This is Martin Street. Town Hall is just out of sight over here. This is a trolley car headed towards Beverly. Downtown Essex is behind us. The poles always lean back towards the rear of the trolley car, so if the pole comes off the overhead wire, it won't jam into something. Anyhow, minor derailment. I don't know how long it took to clear it up. So all the older folks here remember the Junction ice cream stand that gets its name from the fact there was a junction in the trolley lines. See the Sagamore Street sign? The Junction ice cream stand is off to the left. Today there's Junction Lane apartments. Downtown Essex is to the right. This track that these trolleys on directly connected to the line from Beverly to Essex, but here, as the caption says, they're waiting for a car to come out from Beverly. People who wanted to go to Ipswich and Newburyport would get off the Essex trolley, get on this car, and go to Ipswich and Newburyport. Motorman, conductor, and trainman. 3-man crew early on in the trolleys. Now, what did in the electric trolley company? And the electric trolley, a non-polluting public transportation system, only lasted for a quarter century, 1895 to 1920. And what did in the trolley was the flivver, the Model T. These cars are all lined up here. This is 1921, 1 year after the trolley was abandoned. Notice the rails are still in the track. This is the causeway. All these cars are here to watch the launching of the Mayflower, the second Mayflower built in Essex fishing schooner. We're looking towards Gloucester. The overhead wire system is still here. This is just a scratch on the negative. But this is the overhead trolley wire. The tracks are still there. But why would you pay money to ride the trolley when you can drive a car for free? It's never for free. Downtown Essex, August 2nd, 1936, during the Great American Depression, 5 years before World War II began. As you tell, it's a Sunday afternoon, train stored here. Here's the engine house, turntable. Village Restaurant is right up here. Queen Anne's lace growing up out of the tracks, which is an indication we're getting near the end of the railroad. But look at this view, and one of these roofs over here is one of these roofs here. This is the exact same scene. This is Essex, where the municipal parking lot is, right down behind the town hall. That's what it looked like last fall. That's what it looked like in 1936, same location. Now this building, the engine house, which I'll show you a picture of later on, when the railroad was abandoned, that engine house lasted until 2002 when the municipal parking garage was built, a municipal parking lot was built. It survived as the DPW garage for Essex. Here's a train just arrived from Hamilton, color slide by Dana Story. And after all the passengers get off, of course, the engine then backed up. Here's the engineer. He's looking back. He's not looking forward. They're backing up to do the flying switch. Now, this picture, someone scratched in the negative 1896. This is the causeway here, Gloucester to the left, downtown town haul off to the right. This is the oldest picture we've seen of the railroad built over to Kokomo. It's about 6/10 of a mile from Essex Station over to Kokomo. This was a drawbridge because there was a shipyard here. It built ships and they would open the drawbridge. Notice the crude advertising for something to drink here painted on the wood, but this was an opening drawbridge. There's the railroad in the background. And the railroad went 6/10 of a mile to Kokomo Station, the very end of the line. This building still exists today. It's 17 Southern Ave. 17 Southern Ave as a private home. But look how busy the business was over there. And this is about 1905. There was also a telegraph office here. Here's a view of the station from the trackside in 1905. And there's the same perspective today. Now, if you notice the length of the station here, it's not terribly long and there's no windows up there. They lengthen this building and there's 2 bay windows, one here and one down here. I actually just walked up to the door and knocked on the door and asked if I could take pictures, and the woman said, sure, help yourself. Now, the reason for building the railroad to Kokomo was the S.B. Fuller Shoe Company. Jim, I know you disagreed with me, but looking on the map, this is Southern Ave, which was a dirt road according to the map over there. But whatever, this building sat on the corner of Southern Ave and, what's the next? Pardon? Addison Street. Addison Street is just the other side of this building. This 3-story building employed 125 people, according to Dana Story's book. And here they are all outside posing for a picture. And there's one person leaning out a window and several at the front door. There was a rail spur into the back of this building that brought coal for the whatever machinery or heat was in the building, and also took out the finished shoes. Remember the shoebox factory on the other side next to Kokomo Depot. Now, most of you have been, probably all of you have been to the Village Restaurant, but I'll bet most of you have never paid attention to the detail of the mural across the back wall in the right rear dining room. Here's the drawbridge, here's the causeway, and chugging across the marsh in the background. Check it out. Several people here tonight have told me they've actually gone to look for that. This is a huge mural. It's about 20 feet long painting across the back wall, but it shows the train coming from Kokomo to Essex. This is down at Hamilton. This is a train to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, coming into the station. The evening rush hour train didn't come all the way from Boston. It just went from Essex to Hamilton and back. The Essex train is over there waiting for this train. People coming out of North Station in the afternoon rush hour towards the end would come out on the Portsmouth train, get off, walk over and get on the Hamilton train. Now this was steam locomotive, hand-fired. This track also went until 1952, all the way to Portland, Maine. The firemen on this train shoveling coal on a train from Boston North Station to Portland, Maine, 112 miles, would shovel between 14 and 16 tons in 2.5 hours. Was not a job for the faint-hearted. But this is showing the connection. Afternoon rush hour train from Boston, the Essex train waiting for it. After the train to Portsmouth continued on, this train continued to Essex. Now this is a shopping plaza today with Crosby's Market over here, Hamilton Station over here. We're looking towards Boston off to the left. This is all gone, covered over, and Jim Witham told me this is a Packard, neat old car. Now this picture I just stuck in because I think it's a cool picture. This train has come from Essex in the morning rush hour. There's Hamilton Station. We're looking towards Ipswich. I don't know, is this woman the engineer's wife, the engineer's girlfriend, or just some woman who liked trains? I don't know. It's a posed picture, but it shows the water tank for supplying water for the steam engine, and they're making a station stop here. Now, the biggest business on the railroad, after all the ice, the coal, the lumber, the milk, was Centennial Grove. This is not a sharp picture, but it shows this is 1942, the last summer the railroad ran. This road goes down to Centennial Grove. This train has backed the 3.6 miles from Hamilton all the way up to Centennial Grove with 12 cars of city folk going to Centennial Grove for the day. There's a conductor on the rear. This hose that comes up is called a backup hose. It has a valve on it. He can put the brakes on. It has a peep, peep, very loud peep, peep whistle. It looks like a child standing next to him. He's going to stop right on the crossing, and 12 carloads of people will get off. Then the train will back over the crossing to wait for the people to come back at the end of the day. This was the last summer in 1942, and in early, on December 8th, this date right here, 12/8/42, this was a poster, and there's a copy of this on the far wall back over there. This tells the end was coming. It says effective Monday, December 21st, but the last regularly scheduled train would be on Saturday the 19th. Sunday, there never was scheduled service. So effectively, Saturday the 19th was the last day trains ran. Now, this is the last week of service, and to me, it's a very forlorn picture. We're standing on the Essex station platform. There's no longer a light bulb in the socket there. The slats are missing off the seat. The station is closed and boarded up, but there was still a daily train. This is the platform side. Dana Story walked over to the other side. There's the switch where they make the flying switch. Up there, the train's ready to go. It's during a snowstorm. This is the very last daytime train to Essex, Saturday the 19th. Over there in that glass case next to the gentleman in the white t-shirt is a scale model of a ship being built, and next to it is a model of this locomotive owned by the Beverly Historical Society on loan to us. There's an extra car. Normally this would be a two-car train, but so many people knew this was the last train they wanted to ride down. There was one more train after dark, but no pictures exist because it was after dark. After the train, the three-car train pulled into the station. They back up the hill towards Hamilton. The engine is already raced forward. There's a man back there throwing the switch, and there's a conductor on the rear with a handbrake, a wheel handbrake, and he's going to control the brakes as the cars roll back down into the station. By January 1st, the railroad was gone. This is a work train. There's a steam locomotive and a gondola and a crane, and they're lifting up the rail behind it. This picture, these next couple of pictures are taken between Pond Street and Centennial Grove. So there's a crane lifting the rail up. Crane swings around and lowers the rail down into the car. This is all going to the World War II scrap effort. This picture, there's no caption on here. I believe this is a Dana Story picture. No caption on where it was, except it was somewhere between Essex Falls and Centennial Grove. I believe the W does not mean Wenham. All railroads in the country where the engineer has to blow the whistle, there's somewhere near the crossing is a post W. That simply means blow the whistle for this crossing. I think this is the whistle post for Pond Street. We're looking towards Hamilton. The rails have already been lifted here. It's the end of the railroad. Now, an interesting little fact about the end of the railroad, the last trains were on Saturday, December 19th of 1942. From 1942 until 2011, including the MBTA, ran a train in the morning from Boston out to Hamilton and back to Boston, right up through 2011. At Hamilton, behind where the shopping plaza is today, was another Armstrong turntable. Here's the conductor and trainman turning the 97-ton locomotive on the turntable. This is all filled in today. Now here's a classic picture that exists out behind Town Hall on a plaque. Very famous picture. That's Phil Adams. That's his fireman over there. And here's the 1894 Town Hall. A number of people have asked me, why don't they build a railroad back here again today? Why isn't there a railroad today? And there's an artist who lives in North Beverly named Richard Sims. And Richard Sims drew a picture of what he imagined it would look like if the commuter rail ran here today. It's a kind of a cool picture. It's a drawing. And then this is the engine house, the summer of 1943, 6 months after the railroad was abandoned. They're already converting the old two-stall engine house into the DPW garage, which again lasted until the municipal parking lot was built in 2002. Here's an aerial photo taken after the railroad was abandoned. Here is the engine house right here, the steam engine house. The village restaurant sits right here today. There's a stairway down behind the village restaurant to the municipal parking lot. Here's the old 3-story wooden building that started out as a cardboard box shoe factory, then became a clam canning factory, then became an organ building factory. Here's the old roadbed going from the station. The station used to sit right about here. Here's the old roadbed to Canomo. Here is the original fire station in Essex on Perkins Street. And here's where the police and fire station is today. That's about to be replaced. Pardon? Pickering. Thank you. Pickering. My wife used to live on Pickering Street. This is the terminal garage, and also a bus station. When the train service ended, there was for a few years a bus service that ran from here to Beverly in place of the train service.
What year was this?
I think it's 1948. It's after. Could be. It's 1943 or later, because the railroad is gone, abandoned, the turntable pits filled in, but the engine house already has a road into it. The DPW is already using the building. Now here's a kind of a. Oh yeah, thanks for that. That's the old Essex High School, and it was taken down in 48. Okay. This is the road to Gloucester right here, and curve right here going to Ipswich.
Older than new UU church.
Oh yes, yeah. That's a UU church there. The Congregational Church is just out of sight over here. This is Western Ave. This is Apple Street. Here's Essex Falls Station. And here is Essex Falls starting right here. And the railroad was still running. You see all the white here, that's the sand where they load sand cars on the side, and that lasted right till the end. And notice this for you Essex residents, a road. You drive on Apple Street today, you absolutely cannot tell where that road is. There's no evidence whatsoever. And yet there was a grade crossing here between Apple on the other side of Essex Falls Station. Now, notice this. Are you all aware of the fact that Essex once had an airport? These were, I forget, there's an aeronautical terminal for these signs were painted on the roof of barns and buildings all over the US in the 1920s to indicate towns and directions for airplanes before there was air traffic control. This arrow, which pointing to the north, is also pointing to where Essex Airport was. Essex Airfield was directly across the street from where the Essex Exchange is and the golf course is today. But it's interesting for all the things it shows. This shows a big pond here. There was alewife fishing here, and there was a huge pond. Now this is all filled in. Jim tells me one of the first shipbuilding yards was over here. Again, Apple Street, the Essex Falls Station still exists. It's just kind of a neat picture. And the date this was taken is February 8th, 1938. Imagine leaning out the cockpit of an open cockpit biplane in February with the wind roaring by you at 100 miles an hour taking this picture. We're getting close to the end here. People who live in Essex tend to think railroads are gone. This is actually the Boston and Maine Railroad. This is a train that I was driving, and I stopped the train. We're leaving Mechanicville, New York, above Albany, New York. This is the Hudson River. This is a mile-long train with 4 engines that I was driving. This is in around 1976, 77.
How many cars did that?
125 cars, 1.25 miles long. And Hudson River, downriver to New York City to the left, upriver. And Albany is about 10 miles. Pardon?
You stopped that train just so you could take a photo?
Actually, the train wasn't stopped, but that's another story. So all across the U.S., railroads today haul a considerable portion of all the freight moved in America. A railroad, a modern diesel-powered freight train, can haul 1 ton of freight 495 miles on 1 gallon of fuel. But as Senator John Kerry said, testifying before Congress for the new Secretary of Transportation in 1994, the United States essentially does not have a national transportation policy. We build roads. And to put this in perspective, this is an Amtrak train I rode. I've ridden this train twice. This is Glacier National Park. This is an Amtrak train running from Seattle to Chicago. It's called the Empire Builder. And 10 miles behind the rear of this train is Essex, Montana. This is the only place in the U.S. that Amtrak runs inside a national park. You have a question? You've taken the train? Oh, yes. You can stay right next to the... Amtrak stops at the Isaac Walton Inn in Essex, Montana, which is an inn built by the railroad in 1929, and Amtrak still stops there today. That's part of Glacier National Park and evidence of global warming. Where do you think Glacier National Park got its name? Most of the glaciers are gone today. This is taken in September, and most of the snow and ice is melted. This is an incredible place to visit, by the way, Glacier National Park. Oh, and one more comment about Amtrak. What did in National Railroad passenger service in America today is Dwight Eisenhower's Interstate Highway Building Program. When Amtrak was created in May 1st of 1971, Congress authorized Amtrak $40 million to run the system nationwide for a year. 1971 was the height of the interstate highway building boom, and we were spending $40 million a day on highway building. So, the final picture. That's leaving Essex. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am. Oh, this is my wife, Susan. I'm going to embarrass her. Yes, yes, love.
Actually, if they wanted to build the train today, restrictions would keep them from building across the marsh, wouldn't it? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
So they wouldn't be able to.
Well, also there is a building and industrial park in Essex built on the right-of-way, and there's a private home on Landing Road built on the right-of-way. But the right-of-way exists from Hamilton Station to Pond Street in Essex because there's a gas line buried in it. But it veers off at Pond Street from the right-of-way. I thank you all for being here today, and please take some time to look at the photos and the exhibits in the glass cases. And thank you all for being here on the hottest day of the summer. I'm grateful for air conditioning.